Welcome back, everyone. No matter where you are, no matter what time it may be, I hope y'all are doing well out there. You know, I've been doing this for a while now, and every now and then I get lucky and gather enough emails focusing around one subject or theme. These, I don't know why, but I've said it from the beginning. These types of encounters carry a little extra weight for me. This is definitely one of those uploads. Long haul truckers. They don't chase stories, they don't look for headlines. They live their lives on the road, mile after mile, rain or shine. If you ask me, there aren't many folks more reliable when it comes to telling it how it is. They don't have time to dress things up or sugarcoat. They just tell you straight. And I respect the hell out of it. What you're about to hear are 8 different emails from drivers across the country. All unsettling in their own way. Well, we got stories from deer hauling shadows in Pennsylvania to strange shapes pacing rigs out west. These are the kinds of eerie moments, especially the ones at rest stops and way stations. They'll make you think twice about stepping out of your cab at night. Before I get started, I want to remind anyone out there listening, if you've had an encounter of your own and would like to share it here on the channel, please reach out to me. Send me an email. I'd love to hear your encounter. My email address will be linked in the description below this video. You guys ready? Lock in, and let's begin. Everyone grab a drink. Lock your doors and windows. Hit the lights, and let's get started. Hey there, bud. Just call me Pops. Now, I've been driving truck for a long time. Over 30 years, in fact. Now, I've seen about everything you can even imagine out on the road. I've seen cars flipped upside down, fatal crashes everywhere. I've had bears run across the road and nearly get hit many times. I even seen a naked guy once running down I-80 in the snow. But none of that stacks up to what I caught on a run through Pennsylvania late one night. This was back in 2015. I was hauling westbound, somewhere near Clearfield, if I remember right. It's all rolling hills and thick woods through there. Lots of deer. I've hit 3 in my career, and I still get nervous every time I drive through that stretch of night. It was a weekday, probably around 2 in the morning. No traffic in either direction. Just me, a loaded trailer, and the hum of the diesel. My headlights lit up a good patch of the road, and I was scanning back and forth like always, looking for deer eyes shine from the side brush. Then it happened. One of the absolute craziest things I've ever seen in my entire career. Something shot out of the tree line from the left shoulder, right in front of my truck. My foot hit the brake automatically out of instinct, but I didn't have time to even think about swerving. It cleared my lane in about 2 steps. Someone's brain, seeing what I saw, would probably tell you it's just a big guy. But I quickly realized no man carries a whole deer slung over his shoulder like a sack of laundry. That's what this thing was holding. A full-grown white-tailed deer, limp, head bouncing as it ran. That thing that carried it, I don't even know what to say here. I think everyone knows what it was. So I don't really feel crazy when I describe it. It was typically tall. It was broad across the chest like many others, but the legs bent backwards like a dog's. Now, I've heard many say this is a Dogman trait, and werewolves have legs like humans. I don't know how true either of those are, I just know what I saw. Its snout, it was a long one. It was long enough that I got a good look at it for the short time it was in my headlights before it disappeared. The way it ran, this thing was smooth, taking powerful strides. It was almost like it had a pair of roller skates on its feet. It was carrying that deer with no effort at all. I've dragged deer before, as probably some of you listening have, even after they've been field dressed. I've seen grown men struggle with them, myself included. This thing just carried it like nothing. It crossed the entire road in 2 seconds flat, straight into the woods on the other side, didn't even look my direction. I coasted for a mile before I realized I'd been holding my breath. I kept waiting for it to come back out of the trees, but thankfully it never did. When I got to the next truck stop, I just sat in the cab with the engine idling, trying to figure out how I'd even explain it to someone. Why and who would believe a trucker saying he saw a wolf man carrying a deer across the highway? But again, I know exactly what I saw, and I'll never forget how small that deer looked on this thing's shoulder, if that gives a size reference at all. Thanks, Reels. Pops. Reels, don't use my name, please, and thank you. I run I-40 through the panhandle a couple times a month. It's flatter than a pancake out there in a way that makes you feel small. The wind never stops either. It pushes the trailer like a big hand on your back, and the grass along the right-of-way waves like water under a boat. If you've done that stretch at night, you know the drill. Grain silos every so often, a lonely exit sign, maybe a closed-down gas station with one sad light. This was April of 19. It was probably after midnight. I'm not sure of the specific time, but that doesn't matter. I was westbound, light crosswind out of the south. Cruise set, a hair under 70 because the tires were singing and I didn't want to fight it. Reefer load, frozen stuff. So I kept a little more following distance than normal. All you really see is that tunnel of white in front of you, and every once in a while a rabbit or a tumbleweed comes firing out from the median like it wants to die under your bumper. I'd just passed a deer crossing next 7 miles sign and rolled my eyes. No kidding. There are deer everywhere out there. When I caught movement off the right shoulder, that's what I thought. Deer or a pronghorn. You see those too. Heads low and they're quick. But this wasn't low. This was tall. This was huge. And it wasn't darting erratically. It was pacing me and the truck. Let me explain what I mean by pacing. You know how your peripheral catches something that your brain files as car in the next lane? That's how it felt, like someone was running alongside the cab where a sedan would be if there was a frontage road. Only there's no road there, just ditch, fence, and bushes. I eased off the cruise and put my foot into it a touch. Couple miles an hour more. The thing still kept up. I didn't look straight at it right away. There was a voice in my head that says, "Don't do it. Keep the rig steady." I checked my mirrors as an excuse, even though the highway behind me was completely empty. When I finally broke and glanced to my right, I did not process it as an animal. Not at first. It was lean, like a track runner. Long, everything, arms, legs, torso. Dark fur that the wind pushed flat along its back. Its stride was what knocked me backward in the seat. This thing ran like a dog. Its hips were rolling. It had digitigrade legs with the hook back. But the cadence looked human. It was fast, like it had a metronome hidden in its chest. Every hit of its feet matched that dull thump-thump you feel through the floorboards on old asphalt seams. And the head, look. Now, I've seen wolves on TV and coyotes in person a lot. This had a longer snout than either one, and the ears stood taller and a lot more narrow. They were pinned back against the wind. I didn't see pretty clear eye shine. What I saw was the side of a face tilt toward me as if to say, "Yes, I know you're there." That's it. That was all. I added another 5 miles an hour. It added another 5. We were doing this stupid dance at highway speed like I was racing a thing that shouldn't exist. The ditch out there is not smooth. It's rutted, full of rock and bushes and those concrete culverts every few hundred yards. It floated over all of that like it wasn't there. Cleared a culvert like a hurdle. Barely changed its rhythm at all. Up ahead I saw 2 deer in the right-of-way. A doe and a younger one, standing hip-deep in grass, heads high like they'd heard the reefer unit and couldn't decide if it was danger or not. I tapped the air horn twice out of habit. The doe bolted toward the fence, the other one just froze. The Dogman or Wolfman, whatever these things are, it didn't stutter step. It angle cut across the ditch, took the right-of-way in 2 strides, and there was this moment that I still replay where its hand, it snatched the younger deer by the chest like it was grabbing a duffel bag. It didn't tackle it and didn't wrestle it, it just hooked an arm under and lifted. A full, live deer, legs kicking, and this thing never lost a step while doing it. You tell me what is walking around out there that has the strength to do that. I said a word I won't repeat here. Then I did the thing you're not supposed to do. I stared. My lane wandered and the rumble strip started barking, and that kinda snapped me back to reality. I centered up, white-knuckled the wheel, and watched it carry that deer like a jogger with a gym bag. Off the shoulder, over the cattle fence, one hand on the top wire, and hop, and into the scrub. Gone. I took the first exit I could find. It was one of those half-ghost exits. Gravel lot, beat-up dumpster. The kind of place crews stage equipment sometimes. I set the brake and just sit there, a heater blowing on my face because I'd cranked it without thinking. The wind tapped something loose on the trailer and made a little ticking sound. And for a second it sounded like footsteps, and I almost climbed into the sleeper just to get smaller. You fight with yourself, telling yourself you need to radio it in. Animals near the shoulder warn the other drivers that may be coming. You tell yourself you'll make a joke on the CB. Panhandle's got some big coyotes tonight. But there's a line you don't cross because once you say it out loud, you own it. I didn't want to own it. I didn't want to be the guy in the driver's lounge telling tall tales while everyone smirks into their coffee. I got rolling again after about 5 minutes, maybe 10. Hard to say. Every fence post, shadow, looked like something waiting to pace me. I tuned the radio to some preacher out of Amarillo because the human voice felt like a rope to hold on to. I drove under the next overpass, and the sound changed like it always does, hollow for a beat, and I flinched like the roof had opened. 2 exits later, a couple of does crossed well ahead of me. Normal deer activity, deer stuff. Their heads were down, rump over rail, and my heart still tripped over itself because I was waiting for that lean-shaped monster to bust out and grab one. Thank God it didn't. Just deer being deer. We had left the twilight zone. I made the destination around 3:30 and parked nose out by the far lights. I didn't sleep. I sat with the curtains half open and watched other rigs come and go and thought about how big that thing's hand looked wrapped under that deer's chest. I kept trying to scale it in my head. You know the way your brain grabs at measurements. Fence height, shoulder width, stride length. Like that'll make it normal if the math adds up. But the math didn't add up. It didn't help. Morning guy in the fuel lane asked if the wind had been bad overnight. I said, yeah, it's a little bumpy. And he said he hit a jackrabbit big enough to file a claim, and we laughed because that's what you do. You talk about rabbits and blowouts and idiots and on four-wheelers that dive in front of 80,000 pounds like their blinkers made them immortal. You don't talk about a thing built like a runner carrying a deer like a grocery bag. Here's the last piece and then I'm done. On the way back east that evening, the sun was still up, I saw crews working the fence where I'd watched it hop. Looked like they were tightening wire, maybe replacing a top strand. Could be unrelated. Probably is. But the way the foreman stood back and looked at the span the way I look at a tire I don't trust. Hands on his hips, head tilted. It made my stomach churn. I don't have a moral to this. I don't have a lesson. All I've got is the image of something lean and shouldn't exist keeping pace with a 40-ton truck like it was out for a run. Then picking up a deer like it weighed nothing and clearing a fence I'd have to climb with both boots and some cussing. If you run that stretch at night, keep your eyes on the right ditch. Not because you'll see it, because you won't want to if it's there. If you do, keep it between the lines. The rumble strip will wake you, but some things in that grass won't stop just because you did. Thanks. Sorry if it was too long. Anonymous. Thanks for the reply very quickly, Reels. I appreciate it. Now, you already know I'm a trucker. We've talked previously, but here's my encounter. I'll start at the beginning. I don't usually stop at the little rest areas if I can help it. But when you're running I-75 through Michigan at 2 in the morning, sometimes you don't have a choice. Coffee hits, some bladder screams, and you pull over, even if it's one of those half-dead stops with the lights flickering and no vending machines. This was late fall, November 2020, just north of Gaylord. I'd fueled up in Saginaw and figured I could make the bridge without stopping. But the wind off the lake had been brutal, and the concentration wore me down. So I pulled into this rest area, backed into a slot near the end of the row, killed my lights, and let the truck hum to fill the silence. There was one other rig parked 2 spaces down, but the cab was dark. The curtains were drawn. Nobody else was around. The lot lamps gave off that orange sodium glow. It was weak and patchy, wasn't very well for lighting. The woods pressed in tight on all sides, and if you know northern Michigan, you know it's thick. I'd already seen 3 deer carcasses on the shoulder that night. I was sitting there scrolling through the radio for some static to cut the silence when I felt the trailer rock. Not a gust of wind, not another truck idling nearby. This was a single solid thump, like somebody had set their hand against the wall and pushed. I froze, one hand on the dash. The reefer unit droned on, masking everything else. I thought maybe a deer had foolishly brushed the trailer. Wouldn't be the first time. Then came another push. This one was harder, followed by the faintest scraping sound like something dragging, something sharp, lightly across the metal. My throat went dry. I killed the radio and cracked the window an inch. The woods sounded dead. I didn't hear anything out there.
Then I heard something I didn't expect. I heard slow footsteps on gravel circling the truck. Not the light tap of a deer's hooves. These were heavy, uneven, almost human-sounding steps. Something walked along the driver's side close enough that I could hear grit crunch under its weight. My eyes darted to the mirror, but with only those orange lamps overhead, they're worthless. All I caught was slight movement, a shadow taller than it had any right to be. Out of the corner of my window, something leaned in close. Now, this wasn't a person. I know that for a fact. It was just too big. And it had a snout that came first. The snout was short, broad like a mastiff's, black fur. And the eyes, they weren't glowing like people always say. They were reflecting the parking lot, red, like a tail light catching a glint. I've noticed other people's encounters, and mine's no different. You remember the smallest, dumbest, most irrelevant details. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. I had my hand hovering over the ignition, though the engine was already running. I heard it drag a claw lightly down the side of the cab. It's a sound I'll never forget. It wasn't loud, it wasn't violent, it was just enough to say, I'm out here. Then it stepped away, slow, circling back toward the trailer. I could hear it, the crunch of the gravel every time it stepped. I didn't dare look out again. I kept my eyes locked on the windshield. After what felt like an eternity, the sounds faded. The gravel crunch moved toward the trees, and then silence again. I don't know how long I sat there. It could have been minutes, it could have been a half an hour. Finally, I put it in gear and eased out of the slot. I rolled back onto I-75. I didn't check my mirrors, didn't stop until I was across the bridge in St. Ignace. Sorry. Parked in a lit lot with other trucks around. In the morning, I walked the trailer. There were marks. They weren't horrible, but they were noticeable. They were long, shallow scratches along the driver's side. Not deep enough to report, not deep enough to prove anything, but they weren't there before. I know that. I never use that rest stop anymore. I wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't matter if I'm running out of hours, I'll risk the logbook before I risk parking there again. Tom. Any other drivers out there, truckers included, especially truckers. If you've ever driven I-10 through Louisiana, you know the bridge I'm talking about. It's 20-odd miles of raised concrete straight over swamp and water. Nothing but guardrail. It's the stretch where your radio cuts in and out, your eyes blur from the repeating reflectors, and you pray you don't blow a tire because there's no shoulder wide enough to stop on. This was the summer of 2017, the dead of night, pushing through to Baton Rouge. My clock was near done, but I wanted off that bridge before I shut down. You don't park on the basin if you value your skin. About halfway across, I saw movement up ahead on the right shoulder. At first, I thought it was just another broken-down car with someone standing beside it. Happens more than you'd think out there. But as I got closer, I realized there was no vehicle, just a figure standing against the rail. I flipped on my brights, and what I saw just didn't and still don't make sense. It wasn't a human. The thing was huge, as broad as a linebacker, with gray fur. It had one, I don't even want to call it a hand, so I won't, appendage curled around the metal guardrail like it was leaning, and the other hanging by its side. Its legs were bent forward, human style, not backwards like a dog's. The head turned in my direction, and the snout caught just enough light that I could see teeth flashing. I was pulling 80,000 pounds at 65 miles an hour and still felt like I was the smaller one. As I passed, the thing shifted. Just a roll of its shoulders like it was about to move. Its eyes followed me, glowing faint in the brights, but it never left the rail. I could see the steel bending under this thing's grip like it was squeezing without even trying. I just kept both hands on the wheel, staring dead ahead, waiting for the sound of claws hitting pavement. I figured if it jumped in front of me, I'd just plow it and pray the bumper held. Nothing came. Just that sense of being watched as the trailer rolled by. The mirror showed it for a second longer, standing against the rail. Its head tilted like it was listening to the tires fade into the night. Then the reflectors just swallowed it up, and I was alone again on the endless stretch of bridge. I stopped in Lafayette. I pulled into a truck stop lit up like daylight and just sat there, sweating through my shirt like I'd just run a mile. The funny thing is, when I fueled up, the guy across the island, a local driver, saw my face and asked if I'd hit something, a deer maybe. I told him no. He just grinned and shook his head and said, "Bet you saw something out on that basin then." Didn't even wait for me to answer. Just went about his business like it wasn't news. I don't know what these things are, but they're not human, and I don't think they're a regular animal. At least it's not any animal I've ever known. I don't look at that bridge the same way anymore. I've never seen anything else like it, and I pray to God that I never do. Thank you for your time. Anonymous. I'm not much of a typer, so I'll make this as quick as possible and just get right into it. I was headed eastbound on I-10 out of Tucson, headed toward El Paso. That route at night, if you've done it, you know how empty it gets once you clear Benson. It's just desert and the occasional reflector post. There's no light pollution, no towns glowing in the distance. It's just black sky and your headlights carving a tunnel through it. It was late July. Late, or I should say early in the morning hours. The air was hot even then, high 80s. My windows were cracked for a little bit of airflow, and all I could hear was the tires and the rattle of my chains behind the cab. Up ahead, maybe a quarter mile, I saw movement. It was too big to be a deer, and it wasn't a cow either, though you do see plenty of those out that way. This thing was crossing the lanes fast, but it didn't move like livestock. The stride was weird. Its shoulders were high, back sloping down low, head hung forward. I eased off the throttle as I closed the distance. My brights caught it just as it stepped into the left lane. That's when my brain completely melted inside my skull. This looked like a giant hyena. It was stretched up on two legs. The back was hunched. The shoulders were large. Its fur was spotted instead of solid. It had a long tail that dragged behind it. It was swinging side to side every step it took. The legs were bent like a dog's, but its arms hung too long, ending in what looked like the shape of hands, just bigger, and I could see the fingers flexing as it moved. The head was wide. It had blocky jaws, its ears crooked out to the side. Its eyes caught my lights glowing a pale green. It glanced my way, then back toward the desert like I just wasn't even worth the trouble. I gripped the wheel and braked hard, afraid it was going to cut across too slow. But it cleared my lane in a couple strides, moving smooth and steady. It was like carrying all that bulk was easy. Then it hit the shoulder, planted one hand on the guardrail, and vaulted over it like a gymnast. My headlights followed it just long enough to see it disappear into the scrub. I coasted a while. I remember my heart hammering. I was checking my mirrors like it was going to pop back out onto the road. I was terrified. Luckily, nothing ever happened. When I finally stopped for fuel in Lordsburg, I told myself just to keep quiet. But curiosity got the better of me, and I asked the cashier if they'd ever had problems with weird animals crossing the interstate. She gave me a look and said, "You mean the tall hyenas?" I didn't ask her to explain. I've hauled that road dozens of times since that, but every time I hit that stretch near Benson, I find myself leaning forward over the wheel, straining my eyes to the shoulders. Because if that thing could walk across an open interstate like it owned the place, what else could be out there? God only knows. Hopefully, one day we'll find any answers. Anonymous. You haven't lived trucking until you've been stuck on Donner Pass in a snowstorm. Chains on, wipers working overtime, tires on the ice, praying the plows get through before you're frozen to your seat. I've run that stretch plenty of times, but one night in the winter of 2014, something rattled me, and it wasn't because of the weather. It was late, somewhere between Truckee and Soda Springs. The snow was coming down hard, big flakes that swallowed the headlights. Caltrans had traffic crawling, and eventually they pulled us off onto the shoulder. Told us to sit tight until the plows cleared a slide up ahead. Nothing to do but idle and wait. I had the rig in low idle, heat full blast, curtains half drawn. The snow was blowing sideways across the lamps, and every so often I'd catch the silhouette of another rig ahead of me or the faint glow of tail lights behind. Otherwise, it was just a whiteout. About 20 minutes in, I noticed movement. This wasn't the wind, it wasn't snow drifting. This was a dark shape crossing between the parked trucks. At first I thought maybe another driver was out checking his chains, though you'd have to be a lunatic to walk around in that storm. Then it passed in front of my headlights. I nearly had a stroke. This wasn't another driver. It wasn't a man at all. This thing was huge. Its fur was matted, almost frozen with snow. Its head carried low like a wolf on the hunt. It was on two legs, though, and it was hunched. It was crunching through snowdrifts like they weren't even there. I sat up straighter, killed my cab light, and just watched it. The thing turned its head as it moved, and the eyes caught the beams. These weren't red like brake lights, not yellow like deer, more of a dull, burning orange. They locked on my cab for half a second, and I could feel the weight of that thing looking at me in my chest. It's weird, its eyes, its gaze felt like it could pierce into your soul. It didn't seem to mind that I'd seen it. It just kept moving between the rigs, like it was checking each one. I saw it stop at a trailer ahead. It leaned close like it was sniffing the doors, then it turned. I seen snow sliding off its back and kept walking down the line. Every instinct yelled at me to fire up and fire the Jake, roll forward, anything. But the road was completely blocked, and the last thing I wanted was to draw its attention again. I sat there, watching that shadow fade into the curtain of snow. When the plows finally came through and we started rolling again, I could not get rid of the feeling that thing was still out there, pacing us from the trees. Every snowbank looked like it was hiding something upright. By the time I cleared the summit and dropped into Auburn, my palms were slick, sweaty on the wheel. I didn't stop for coffee, I didn't check my chains, I just wanted to keep rolling until the air turned warm and the snow was gone. I've been back over Donner plenty since then, but every winter night, when the snow's thick and the traffic slows down, I catch myself looking between the rigs because I know what I saw out there. And if it was comfortable walking that pass in a blizzard, then nothing will stop it from being there again. These things seem to be everywhere. Appreciate it. Believe me or not. JT. Reels. Now, I'm not sure if this is a popular opinion or just my own, but way stations are creepy enough at night even without anything strange going on. Half the time you pull in and there's nobody around, just a couple of lights buzzing and the scale glowing green. The quiet settles heavy, especially when you've been rolling all night, with the hum of the road in your ears. This happened back in 2018, middle of summer, eastbound on I-80 near Barkeyville. Scale House was closed. You can tell when the overheads are dark, but the sign said open. So I rolled in to be safe. Figured I'd park for a minute and stretch my legs and check the load straps. The lot was empty. I parked nose first near the side. Left my lights on while I climbed out. The air was thick with the smell of pine and diesel. I'd just started walking the trailer when I felt it, that prickling across the back of your neck like someone's watching you. I stopped, one hand on the ratchet strap, and listened. At first I didn't hear anything. Then I started hearing steps in the gravel, crunching, off toward the tree line behind the scale. I thought it was possible another driver had pulled in without me hearing, but there weren't any lights. Then I saw movement between the lamps. It was this stocky, extremely stocky, dark shape. It was too low to be a man and too wide to be a four-legged animal. It stepped out far enough that the glow hit its face. Its eyes were a bright blue, clear as headlights on high beam, reflecting back at me. My brain wanted to say wolf, but wolves don't stand upright, and that's what this thing did. They sure as hell don't walk slow and steady across a parking lot like they're taking their time just moseying around. It kept coming my direction, steady. When it was maybe 40 feet away, it just stopped. Those blue eyes were locked on me, and I swear to God it felt like I was being sized up. Not exactly prey, more like curiosity. I didn't move, I didn't even breathe loud. My headlights caught just enough detail. It didn't have a tail. Its shoulders were broad. It had hands on its front legs, and I could see its chest rising and falling like it was talking to me. Then, just as quiet as it came, it turned and walked off toward the trees. It wasn't trying to hurry, it just casually strolled back off into the dark. I stood there another 5 minutes before I could make myself climb back in the cab. I didn't even check the rest of the straps. I just put it in gear and eased out, careful not to look too hard at the dark patches beyond the lights. That night I didn't run the radio. I didn't make a call, I just drove, replaying those eyes over and over, still to this day. Not animal, not human, something in between. The next morning, daylight burning, I finally checked the trailer at a truck stop down the line. Everything was fine, but when I bent to tighten a strap, I caught myself looking in the tree line like a man expecting company. The way it looked at me, it wasn't hungry or aggressive. It was interested, and to me that seems very unsettling, if not worse. Amazing channel and amazing work. Keep going. Anonymous. I drive truck. I was headed north on the Jersey Turnpike somewhere past midnight, spring of 2016. You run that road enough and you get used to the rhythm, long stretches of blacktop, then the sudden blast of light at a toll plaza. I'd been hammering down since Baltimore and was ready to call it a night once I hit Newark. Traffic was light, just a couple cars here and there. I rolled into the toll area, slowed to a crawl, and aimed for one of the open lanes. Most of the booths were unmanned at that hour, just automated machines glowing under those big sodium lamps. That's when I noticed something very odd. Off beyond the edge of the floodlights where the plaza meets the tree line, something was standing there. I figured it had to be a worker in a reflective vest, but there was no shine, no gear, just this dark shape, still as a statue. I fed my ticket into the machine, waiting for the arm to lift. While I sat there, I couldn't help glancing back toward the shadow. The longer I looked, the less it resembled a man, and the less comfortable I became. Its arms were too long, hanging past the knees. The shoulders were narrow, but the torso stretched out tall. The head, it had a muzzle, faintly outlined. The eyes lit up. Not the usual animal eye shine. These were yellow and sharp, like two coins catching the toll lamps, and they were fixed on me. The machine finally spit my receipt, and the arm went up. My hand was shaking as I dropped the rig into gear. I eased through the lane, eyes on the road, but curiosity just brought them back to the mirror. The thing had not moved. It was still at the edge of the trees, watching me. I didn't see it step forward. I didn't see it leave. Just that same tall outline holding its ground until the lights dropped in out of sight. I told myself I was exhausted. It was just shadows playing tricks on me. But as I rolled into Newark, I kept replaying the stillness of it. Deer bolt. Coyotes will scatter. Even people will shift their weight after a while. This thing never twitched. Next week I was running south, the same stretch, different time of night, different booth. But as I slowed for the arm, my eyes went to that same patch of trees. And for a half a second I swore I saw two yellow eyes blinking. I don't like the Turnpike anymore. Not at night. Not when the road funnels you into a bright little island where all you can do is stop and hope nothing is watching you from the dark. Jersey Pete. Friends, legends, family. There you have it. 8 stories from the road that you won't find in any logbook. Now, I have family members that are truckers, and they don't scare easy. That's exactly what makes these encounters so chilling. If a man who's seen just about everything says something shook him, then you know it's worth paying attention to. Before I let you guys go, I just want to say thank you for being here. Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been riding with me since the start, your support is what keeps this channel alive. Every time you listen or drop a comment, every email that you guys send in means more than I could express here. And to the drivers out there, and I know a lot of you tune in from the cab on these long hauls, stay safe out there, stay sharp, and know that you're appreciated. Without you, this country just doesn't run. Again, if you've got an encounter of your own, don't keep it to yourself. Shoot me an email. This channel exists because of you. All you legends out there, you stay safe as well. I love each and every one of you, and I pray the best for you and your families. Until next time, my friends, watch over your loved ones, keep your head on a swivel, and as always, good night.